Okay.
I'm sorry my story is boring you.
I just always do that.
Because my stories always bore you?
Oh.
Welcome to the Charlotte Buzz, where we drink beer from local breweries while telling stories about the neighborhoods they're from. I'm Chrissy, and this is Drew.
And today we're drinking the Carolina Thread Trail Pale Ale.
Hey,
Tongue
baby
twister.
steps.
From Blue Blaze.
Shabam.
It is a hazy pale ale.
I mean, yeah, shocker why this is my step out of the IPA
Yeah.
region.
So not doing an IPA today, guys.
Hey, big money.
4.5%.
I'm trying, guys. Baby steps here.
Yeah. 4.5%. It is a juicy beer. Hazy, golden in color.
Yeah, I was going to say it's much more amber looking than usually what I'm used to looking at, which, again, not an IPA, but still.
Let me help you out. Okay.
Keep talking. I'm good. You can set it down.
So they partnered with the Carolina Thread Trail for this beer. And I'm going to tell you what that is.
Tell us.
Because it sounds to me like they took a piece of yarn and made a trail out of it.
Sheesh.
But the Carolina Thread Trail connects people of all ages to nature, to each other, and to communities throughout the southern Piedmont. It meanders, I like that word,
I do too.
over hills, along streams, through neighborhoods, past lakes, wildlife habitats, and wildflower fields. Yuck. And even though the
all
heart...
the things that will make you sneeze and die.
Yeah, and even through the heart of Charlotte.
I love it. Not you dying, but all those things.
Birders love it.
Birders.
Is that bird watchers?
I assume.
Or
bird
people who raise
enthusiasts?
birds.
I assume watchers and enthusiasts. I can't say I have ever once heard them called a birder.
Well, that's what they're calling them.
I mean, maybe it's a breeder because it sounds like a herder.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So do hikers, runners, cyclists, and paddlers. Heard of those before.
I like some of those. I'm going to taste this beer while you keep going. Okay.
At completion, this regional network of trails, greenways, and blueways will link a 15-county area in North and South Carolina. You can become a member of the Carolina Thread Trail. You'll get Thread Trail swag. Plus insider info on trail openings, events, volunteer opportunities, and more, while helping us weave miles of additional trail throughout the region.
You can also get some swag if you go to some of the festivals where they show up at, and they'll spin a wheel and have you answer trivia.
Yeah.
And then, bam.
What'd you get?
Swag.
Koozie?
I think a koozie, yeah.
Koozie. But Trailheads membership starts at $25. We will link it below. But it is carolinathreadtrail.org.
Cool.
Yeah, they're pretty, they're active in the beer scene. Hang with Blue Blaze. They're usually like right beside them, are they not?
Which, yeah, and I mean, yes, if possible. I'm specifically thinking of an interaction. You weren't there, but Jackie and I had gone and done a video at Rural Hill for
Brewers and Music Festival.
Yes, and the way they had it physically set up, where all the breweries were on one side of the, like in one field, and then everybody else was in another one, so they couldn't be. But when I tell you about the brewery itself in a second, it'll make perfect sense as to why this collaboration happened and why they are generally working together all the time anyway. So what type of, it's a pale ale?
Yes, a hazy pale ale.
See, I would have almost ventured to say it tastes more like a lager, at least in my tiny scope of the world of beer. It's very crisp.
It's like a lager, but with more hoppy punch.
Total, yeah. Because I feel like I try so hard to want to like lagers just out of some weird,
Yingling,
I was gonna say some weird, like hometown pride of Yingling or something because that's so close. But I've tried them a decent bit, wanting to like them and not really. So it tastes more like that to me than what I'm used to, but a bit earthy, pretty hoppy, crisp.
Yeah, I'm getting the vibe I'm getting from it. Of course, it'll drink. But the vibe I'm getting from it is if I'm going to choose a beer, like with the race, I don't know where we are in this podcast of did the race already happen or not. The race at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Oh.
All-Star
I don't even know
race,
when that is or anything.
Well,
but go ahead.
One of them's Memorial Day weekend. So I don't know if this podcast, when it is, and if the race has not happened. Luckily, there's 2. Well, there's 3. So maybe there's still a race that's going to happen. But I feel like it's more of like you could drink this a lot. Like you could take it to the race to tailgate with you and just drink this Thread Trail Pale Ale.
I could see that, yeah.
Instead of like some of those you can't drink a double IPA
all day long
in the sun.
Nah.
I feel like this you could.
I would agree with that.
This would be like a great replacement for like a Budweiser. If you don't like the stud, then you could go with. But I mean, it may be the next choice for something like that. Just because it's easy to drink and feel like I could drink a lot of it.
I mean, I feel like that's your answer for everything. Well, easy to drink, and I'll drink quite a few.
But this more so.
I understand what you're saying, but
this is a good tailgating beer.
Okay.
For me, it's more my style. I mean, yes, I would tailgate with Yinglings back in the day.
I feel like it almost tastes like, again, with all my experience here, almost like florally. Like, so every year with the open streets, when the breweries kind of collaborate and they make one batch of beer and then they each pick a different ingredient. And so you can kind of go from brewery to taste the same beer, but how they brewed it differently with that one different ingredient that was picked locally. Quite frankly, I only half listen when you tell us what's in these beers because I'm too busy pouring it and trying not to spill it all over the table. But it felt like, I think the taste to me feels like one of those beers that we've tried in the past where it's like, because it's the Carolina Thread Trail, maybe they picked some of the ingredients specifically from that trail, and it just feels like you can taste a little bit of like nature in the cup. And
I ain't getting that.
I mean, not so much in the sense of like I'm playing a sport in the field and I end up eating grass. Not quite like that, but it has that like, maybe if you were out running on the trail or something and you're breathing heavy and you get that kind of taste of the air in your mouth. I know you know that from all your running days, but I don't know. I just feel like you could taste a little bit of nature in it.
Maybe. Not me, though. I think
that's just because I know what nature tastes like.
Yeah. They didn't have a description on their website, so we had to go pull from Untapped. And I want to share this. Don't look at it.
I'm not.
I want to share this comment from a fellow beer drinker of the Carolina Thread Trail Pale Ale.
Okay.
It is Llama B.
All right.
They said, "Merm, herm, nerm, herm, herm, nerm."
I get it.
Very helpful.
Yes. Dang.
Yeah.
They are on point.
I'm getting that exact taste. Merm, herm, nerm, herm, herm, nerm. I don't know what this is.
Does it tell you like what time of day they posted that or anything?
It says the Llama Sanctuary, which is a zoo exhibit and event space, is where they drink it.
It's set in Connecticut, so that tells you everything you need to know right there.
And they have like a picture of a llama as like Boba Fett.
What in the world is this?
I don't know, but
I have so many questions. Yeah. So
nerm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see it.
Totally. Llama
Anyways.
Bee, I have so many questions for you.
Yeah. Tell us about this brewery.
So many questions. Well, so Blue Blaze was created in 2016. So they are going on their 3rd year anniversary shortly. They are known for reinterpreting classic flavors in German, English, and American beers. They're actually the first tenant of the Savannah Mill, which I almost did my story on, but chose to stay away from the mill life for now, since I feel like I've talked about that pretty extensively already. But it's a 100-year plus old mill in the historic West End, and it's now part of a redevelopment project that they're hoping to have all kinds of tenants, co-working space, like weddings and events and that whole 9 out there. So that's really cool. So they're the first tenant of it. It's actually, when we drove by the other day and I was looking at all of those pieces of artwork that were like covering windows, it's that whole thing. And the artwork that's kind of stand-in right now. It's pretty cool. But anyway, they're on the Stewart Creek Greenway.
Okay.
And they're just outside of, I think they said less than a mile from, I forget the name of it, but there's a park right there in 3rd Ward that's pretty common. So it's all right there. So you can go for a run and say, screw this, I'm done, and get a beer. You're kind of running.
I would just drive there.
Yes. So they are named because Blue Blaze is this little, just, a blue stripe. So if you're going hiking on a trail, the trails are usually marked with a little like paint swatch on the trees, and that's how you know you stay on that path. And if you follow the specific color, that's the trail you're on, and you know where you're at and where you're going. So those little swatches that are painted on the trees are called blazes, which is probably where we get trailblazing. It wasn't just the people who created the trails, but they specifically went through and marked them off for everybody. Shabam. You're welcome.
Wow.
I know. Profound,
2
right?
and 2 together.
Bam. But the cool thing that I didn't actually know, I had actually already known all of that about them, but what I didn't know, and this is quoted directly from their website, is side trails that lead to water, relaxation, and camaraderie were often identified by a blue trail marker. And so that's why they're specifically Blue Blaze, because they wanted it to represent just this like friendship and comfortable relaxation area to be together.
How sweet.
I thought it was cool.
Yep.
And then I just want to talk for a second about our experience there, because I thought it was it's a very interesting spot, but it...
Off the beaten path.
Yeah. But I feel like it looked smaller than it was.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I thought it was going to be really tiny, and then walked in and I was like, oh, this is way bigger. It's very comfortable. It was like super cozy, not in a like, oh, I'm tight and cramped way, but just like it was very comfortable. It was very nice. And then there is this little bit of outdoor space that has like pit fires and just like fun. Let me kind of like, it very much meets the branding of we're a nature oriented type of thing, where you could go outside and feel like you're camping and having a bunch of beers with friends. And then there's also this like outdoor deck space. And then there's also this, the inside is just really comfortable and cozy and really like clean and neat.
They had rocking chairs.
They did have rocking chairs.
May have been the only brewery I've been to that had rocking chairs that I can think of.
I want to say I don't think that's true, but I also can't give you an example. So it might very well be.
Maybe that could be an idea for season 2. Like, we're only doing rocking chair breweries.
Will we find 20 of those?
No. Not if I don't think we've been to one yet.
Yeah, I think that'll be something interesting. But all right. So we're going back to the historic West End for this episode, and hopefully we've got some new things going on, and hopefully we've not caught ourselves in a pickle of having the same story or any of that.
Okay.
So tell me what you got, what you really, really got.
Well, what I got was only in Charlotte for about 2 years.
All right.
So, small amount of time, but played a large role
Okay.
in developing Charlotte. So, we're in the summer of 1917. There's a world war going on.
What?
The first one.
What?
The United States government needs places to train large numbers of troops quickly. So it looks to the south because of the warm climate. And the North Carolina cities of Fayetteville and Charlotte send delegations to Washington, D.C. to compete for a camp. Hope that pop filter caught that. Anyways, the government decides on Charlotte. Actually, Charlotte, after they were picked for a camp, they helped Fayetteville with their bid to get one.
Okay.
And then eventually Raleigh got one. So there are 3 camps. Raleigh's is Camp Polk, Fayetteville's is Camp Bragg, and the one I'm going to talk about is Camp Green.
All right.
Have you heard of that?
Tell me more.
No time was wasted after the decision to build Camp Green. On July 23rd, the Consolidated Engineering Company of Baltimore, Maryland, put 1,200 men to work on the project. Eventually, there would be nearly 8,000 men working. Camp Green occupies 2,500 acres.
No big deal.
And had 2,000 buildings. Included a 60-acre hospital facility.
That.
With 2,000 beds.
For a training camp. What were they doing for training?
But 60 acres for a single hospital? Thing's massive.
Dang.
Had more than a mile of horse stables. A YMCA. To make it official, a post office. And a bakery that produced 40,000 loaves of bread a day. So quite the poppin' spot. It was named Camp Green in honor of first.
Yes, tell me.
Camp Green was named after somebody who has been named after things in North Carolina before.
Bub Green.
No. Greensboro.
Hey.
And the brewery that we've been to called Natty Greens.
We've been there?
Yeah, when we went to Greensboro.
Oh, we have been there.
Jeez.
All right.
So Natty Greens is named after Nathaniel Greene, a Revolutionary War general. Nathaniel Greene. Did
Natty?
I say Nathaniel Greene?
You sure did.
Yeah.
Natty? Good old Natty.
So Natty Green had Camp Green in Charlotte, Greensboro itself, and Natty Green's Brewing Company.
Well, shoot.
Quite the man. Don't know anything about him.
He makes good beer dough.
Yeah. The camp also had 25 miles of roads, 50 miles of water pipe, and 301 miles of electrical wire. And they built all that, and they're like, well, we got nowhere to fire our guns. So
That's perfect. That's perfect.
added an additional 15,000 acres in the Gastonia area for rifles and artillery ranges. Six weeks after they started construction on this massive thing, they started moving people in. So that's why they needed 8,000 men to work there.
Yeah.
Because they had to get her going. Somewhere stated that they've used enough lumber for Camp Green that you can make a 2-foot wide walkway all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge from
wow. That's nuts.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the truth behind that, but
That's nuts.
I don't know how they figure that out.
No idea.
But so they moved in, and about 40,000 troops would be in there at any given time.
Okay.
And that pretty much doubled the population of Charlotte.
Ooh. Yeah, that'll do it.
Wanted to talk about the troops who showed up, and I'm gonna make an assumption that this is when it started. The Yankees getting the idea to move down. Most of the troops were from New England and the western states. They probably went back and told everyone that, Boston is shit compared to the Queen City, so let's all move back.
We're looking at you, Jackie.
That's what I'm
We
assuming.
are looking at you, Jackie. Just saying.
Because, the majority were from Massachusetts.
Looking at you, Jackie.
Some of the troops, though, were recent immigrants who barely spoke English. About 500 men took English lessons at the Camp Green YMCA. And few people had expected any black troops to be sent to a southern camp, but at one time 14,000 black troops from Massachusetts and Connecticut were stationed there. I mean, early 1900s.
Yeah, that could.
I guess.
Based on what I'm going to talk about, which is not related to this at all, the timing is interesting, I guess.
Well, remember when I told you that the government picked southern states because of the warm climate? Mm-hmm. Well, all of these people started moving in September, and that December started one of the harshest winters in Charlotte's history.
Of course. That's awesome. I mean, it's not. It is not awesome. But 100 years from then, and it unfortunately just being, words on a page and not as real, that's freaking hilarious. Yeah. That would figure. Carry on.
I think you're shaking the table a bit because my mic's going crazy. I was like, am I breathing that hard into it? So heavy rain, snow, sleet, and extreme cold plagued the camp. Troops living in tents on wooden platforms had difficulty staying warm.
I'd say so.
Most were forced to burn green wood for fuel, which gave off a lot of smoke but little heat. Mm-hmm. And then once everything thawed out and the winter was over, it was just a muddy mess.
I believe that.
And they say that it pretty much stayed like that for the rest of the time. It was just muddy. I mean, once you start tramping on mud...
it just continues, yeah. I've done enough mud runs to know that stuff only gets worse.
So troops, whenever they would come to Camp Green, would stay for 30 to 90 days.
Okay.
And they trained in trench warfare, for the most part. More than 5 miles of zigzag trenches were dug to replicate the ones in battlefields in France. Mm-hmm. These trenches averaged a depth of 8 feet, but some were 15 feet deep. And some had bunkers as deep as 30 feet underground.
Wow.
So quite the
setup.
Undertaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean though.
And I'm not sure if it was started by the cold conditions, the wet, muddy aftermath, or just the fact that you had people from all over the country in one confined area. But the most serious problem that the camp faced was an influenza epidemic. It estimated that half of the 80,000 people who lived in Charlotte, so 40,000, pretty much double the, and at Camp Green were infected, causing more than 1,200 deaths in a few short months.
Yikes.
One funeral home had 60 bodies awaiting burial, and citizens told of coffins stacked like wood at the train station waiting to be shipped home.
That's terrible.
So the flu was just taking them out.
Yikes.
And that was before flu shots.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So think about that when it comes to vaccinations.
Are you telling the population in general, or the person across the table from you?
I don't know. I don't get the flu shot.
I don't either. That's why I was like, I believe in vaccinations.
Yeah.
I don't think the flu shot is crap, but I think it changes too frequently, and all you're doing is making yourself get sick, and then the strain changes, so it's irrelevant, in my opinion. You had to have it at least once. You were in the military.
Oh, yeah, I had it.
You had
quite
all the
often.
cocktail for
Yeah.
a while, but
I'd get shots like every other day, seems
yeah,
like.
I believe that. Yeah, I'm all for actual vaccinations. Do that because measles and all that crap that's coming back is a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the flu shot, do what you need to do. It's whatever.
It wasn't all death and despair, though.
Hooray!
In true Charlotte fashion, the city provided socials, band concerts, and other community events to get the troops involved.
Swell. We like to have our parties around here.
Yeah. Churches organized to make everyone feel at home. Some Sundays, as many as 4,000 soldiers were invited to individual homes for dinner after church services.
Well, that's sweet.
And new businesses were created to help counteract the needs of the doubling of the population.
That's good.
So the economy has
Booming. Just before the Great Depression.
Yeah. Right before. Roaring 20s and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Gatsby that.
Yeah. Some people believe, and this ties back to last week's episode, that Camp Green was a large part of the Belk brothers' success.
Ooh. I mean, yeah, that, I could see that.
The amount of stores that they had tripled during the Camp Green stint.
I mean, I could absolutely see that.
So because of the success of their Charlotte store, they were able to open in other areas.
That makes perfect sense.
Yep. So Camp Green, Camp Bragg, and Camp Polk aided the war effort by training troops, but they also greatly helped the economic development of North Carolina. Camp Green brought thousands of men to Charlotte, and many returned to marry and settle down when the war ended.
Bringing all them dang Yankees back down into your hood.
Yeah.
Shame.
So Camp Green doesn't exist anymore. There is a park, and the community around it still called Camp Green. There's, I think, the Dowd House is the name of it. Is like the only standing structure left.
Okay.
And it's still there, and it's like a museum for Camp Green now.
That's cool. I want to go to that. I was going to ask if there were any standing structures left, but
I think in the park, if you like travel off of the paths, there's some like old wells and like just like foundations of things.
That's cool.
There is a story, a spooky story.
Hey, looking at you, J-Tap.
About the Camp Green Park. But we'll save that for later.
Oh, sorry, J-Tap.
I think we could use that
next time we get in the...
around the Halloween time, so I'm going to table it. We're going to table it.
Okay.
Come back to it later. But Camp Bragg, now known as Fort Bragg, in Fayetteville.
Vietnam?
Not Vietnam.
Fayette freaking Nam.
I mean, I call it Vietnam, but
do you really?
yeah.
I've never heard you say that.
Vietnam?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Anyways. And 82nd Airborne, knew some guys from there. It's one of the most rapidly deployed units in the military, so Fort Bragg's still going strong.
All right.
I think they kicked out their special forces, but they moved to Florida. But still, popping as far as military goes.
Definitely a huge influence on the growth of our area, though. Like, huge. That's cool.
I'm sure there's more stories that we can pull out of that. There's like...
Yeah.
They have like scanned versions of newspapers that was put out by the hospital there. Like they tried to help with morale and had like comics and stuff, and they're like all scanned.
That's
and like
cool.
on the interwebs. So I'm sure there's plenty of stories that we could probably do about it later, like some more specific deets. But yeah, I thought a good overview would work for the first time.
I like it. I'm good with that.
And that's my story.
And you gonna stick to it. All right. Well, I'm gonna take us just slightly past that in time, and I'm gonna start talking about a very specific address. Bum bum bum.
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
No.
Oh.
This building may or may not be white, though. I'm not sure. And that address is 333 Beatty's Ford Road.
Try.
Bum, bum, bum. So, a little backstory on the times we're coming up on.
Okay.
Isn't it always great when I unfold my notebook and there's twice as many notes in front of me than you thought I had? It's great. So, 1899. Just before your troops start coming on in, is when we get the very first separate but equal laws here in the greater Charlotte area, and it's specifically dealing with passenger trains and seating and all that. But by 1920, we have full-blown segregation, different structures, like basically two completely different societies running parallel at that point. Something I thought was very interesting, and I have a direct quote here from historian Thomas Hanchett.
Handshit?
No.
Handshit.
Handchet. But it's one word. Hanchett.
Handshit.
Yes. So historian Thomas Hanchett said, by early 1920s, most Charletians, we still haven't figured out how to say that word, resided in a patchwork pattern of self-contained neighborhoods, each distinct in its own developer-devised street system and each largely homogeneous in its racial and economic makeup. I specifically wanted to point that out because I got most of my material for my story from a historical landmark commissions report, and I just thought that was so interestingly worded about this patchwork of neighborhoods and communities, because when I first moved down here, which is 4 or 5 years ago now, we looked at a bunch of different apartments and just tried to get a feel for the area because we had no idea. And talking to the leasing agents said, how's the neighborhood? Is it good? Is it bad? Like, where's the good side of town? Where's the bad side of town? And we continuously got the reply of, well, it just kind of comes in little patches where there's little kind of segments. And I don't mean to say like certain demographics are the issue or not the issue, but that general notion of just being a little bit of like patchworky community has proceeded on, nearly 100 years later, that even though, yes, we still have a lot of racial divides here and there, but it just generally, we don't have a good side of town, a bad side of town, whatever. Just the entire community in the greater Charlotte area is just very patchworky, and I think it was just said closely enough to something I'd already heard. So that was interesting.
Cool.
So despite struggling for rights, many of the African Americans were still very proud of their Southern and American heritage, and so even though they kind of were available to move up north where maybe they would have a little more freedom and less of this segregated lifestyle, that pride for their Southern roots was still existent. And so it then became these two like completely, I was going to say coexisting, but existing in very similar quarters, but two completely separate communities just totally happening with their own, businesses, their own, even financial things, just completely there. So that's what we're leading into. So then in 1928, and this name will be interesting to you, I'm sure, we have a man named Samuel Pharr, Pharr.
Okay.
If you're not watching on YouTube, the face of recognition was real. Purchased a building on the corner of Beatty's Ford Road and Mill Road.
Okay.
And it was a 2-story brick commercial building that had 2 retail vendor spaces in the front of the building on the first floor, a theater in the rear on that first floor, and the second floor had a few apartments.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my story is boring you.
I just always do that.
Because my stories always bore you?
Oh.
Yeah. So, the Pharr building, Pharr, as it was known to as it was called in that time, was this kind of revolving door of storefronts, these businesses, and whether it was the community just not allowing the businesses to flourish or the businesses themselves were just not run properly, unclear. But it's just this revolving door of all these people coming in and out.
They probably would have done better with a close building.
This guy. I need more beer to deal with you. Anyway. So that's 1928.
Yeah.
1929, per the Charlotte City Directory, after having some initial vendors and lessees, I don't know, I had a different word in my brain, but people renting out the spaces. In 1929, we end up with the Pearl Theater.
Tenants.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good.
I was very excited about the word tenant.
That's what she was looking for.
Yes, it was. So we end up with the Pearl Theater and then 2 different lunch counter establishments. That's 29.
Okay.
And 30, we no longer have the theater and we have Johnson's Cafe there.
Okay.
And by 1935, Farr had to file for bankruptcy. And the building was sold at auction for $9,000. It was purchased for $9,000. No, nor I, nor the internet have done the math on what that is today.
Oh my gosh.
But $9,000 bought by T.C. Wilson. That was in 35. In 1937, he opened up the Grand Theater.
Okay.
And he had a lot more success than good old Farr did. So it was an instant success, and the majority of the audience were students from Johnson C. Smith University. Mm-hmm. They came to a lot of late shows and specials. They actually interviewed someone who used to sell tickets at the counter in a, 2000s interview.
Moving pictures?
Yes.
Or plays?
Moving pictures.
Okay, moving pictures.
Yes. A movie theater.
Okay.
So there's been reports that they have had up to 500 people in attendance. However, there's also reports that there are only 390 seats.
Standing room.
Right. And so that's what I mean. It's not impossible by any means, but it's also who really knows exactly what those numbers look like. But they reported to have crowds at every single show, and they would play shows from 1 p.m. in the afternoon through 9 p.m. every single day. And they constantly had crowds. And what they were more known for is, so in this time, the segregation laws did not require there to be separate buildings for movie theaters, but separate seating areas for blacks and whites.
Okay.
And so there were plenty of movie theaters that blacks were allowed to go to, but they had to sit in upper balcony seating or very far back seating. And there was a lot of, obviously, just discomfort and everything with that. So there were actually 5 specific theaters that were built that were specifically black theaters in the greater Charlotte area. Mm-hmm. And the majority of them actually played what they called B-rated movies, or like these kind of like delayed release movies. Or not delayed release, but they had already been released, been out for a while, and then they finally came into these theaters.
Yeah, like your cheap, like your dollar theater.
Yes.
Does.
Yes. So after it goes out of all the regular theaters, now they'll bring that one up. Yes. So delayed theaters. But the Grand Theater specifically always had A-rated films. And so one they specifically called out was Gone with the Wind. And they also noted that on Saturdays, they mostly played Westerns. So,
hey,
yeah.
Everybody needs a day for Westerns.
I mean, you got to do you. So, it was just, again, the reason this specific theater did so well was, one, out of the ones that were specifically like African-American places, this one had the most current and exciting stuff. Mm-hmm. It was in a really great location, being so close to the university, and it became one of those, we could do all of this in even nicer buildings, more updated buildings, all that stuff if we went to a, mixed race theater. But it became this safe haven and this kind of, it was just this place of freedom where they didn't have to be scrutinized or intimidated or any of that like underhanded stuff that would go on with the separate but equal in the same building. And I think that was also what propelled its success, because it said so many people would come in there every single day. And that was just their like 1 minute to be able to breathe and say, okay, like, I don't even care what the show is. I don't care if I've seen it a dozen times. I can just breathe and feel totally comfortable and like nothing bad is going to happen for a little bit of time. And so it became that safe haven in that aspect. Yeah, so for a lot of people, it was less. Yes, there was definitely a lot of entertainment value, but it became more of a daily routine of peace than it was as just a fun activity, which the activities were severely limited and then severely restricted during all the Jim Crow laws and everything. Just, it was chaos. So that opened in 1937, instantly flourished, and then survived through the 40s and 50s when they were trying to kind of reverse a lot of these laws and reintegrate everybody. And then into the 60s, attendance started declining as they were being dismantled further, the Jim Crow laws being dismantled further. And then bigger, fancier theaters started showing up and started pulling the audiences away to those theaters. And then by 1967, the Grand Theater closed its doors, so it had a really strong 30-year run. And then in the years that followed, there were several barbershops, beauty salons, convenience stores. Not quite the same level of revolving door that we had prior to the theater, but, you know, just natural progression of turnover during that time. There was a brief stint in the 1970s where they leased the building to Johnson C. Smith as dorms, which I just thought was a interesting thing, especially since we had actually discussed the dorms a little bit the other day. Currently, and I say currently, with an asterisk on it, because all of my information, like I said, is coming from a Historical Landmark Commission report, and that was done in 2002. So 17 years later, I can't exactly commit to this, but as of that time, the building was known as United Plaza. So we went from the Farr Building to the Grand Theater, and now kind of known as the United Plaza. And at that time, it had a beauty supply store, a hair salon, and the apartments upstairs were still active. So on May 19th, 2003, it was officially deemed a historic landmark. Also, I was like, your glass is empty. Handle that. And part of the reason, probably the majority of the reason, not the majority of the reason, there's plenty of historical significance there, but probably the most continually existing reason for it to be a historic landmark is it is actually the last standing theater that was solely African-American audience. Most of the other theaters were demolished during the 60s for the urban renewal projects, but with its kind of ties and location to Johnson C. Smith, it gave them a little more leeway to be working with them. And since it wasn't quite in Center City and all of that, it was kind of the perfect set of circumstances that allowed it to stay standing and skip the wrecking ball. And now, it just holds so much historical
value.
Yes. And it sounds like it's still kicking. And we actually drove, I don't know the specific address of it, but we drove right around all these roads. So I imagine we drove past it and saw it and just didn't even realize. But I would absolutely be interested to go back. We did specifically drive past the Excelsior Club from last time to snag a few pictures and all that. But we'll have to go check it out. But that's pretty much it. I just thought it was really interesting, I guess, to see the context of, without getting overly deep and emotional like I did last time, just to see how something so simple as a movie theater can become this safe haven. and how that can become a daily routine to be a sense of freedom more than a sense of entertainment. And
Safe
I love,
space, as they call it nowadays.
yeah. But I mean, that's crucial. And it sucks that it had to happen the way it did, but I'm glad they had that. And also, like, I hate how so much history gets destroyed. Like, I mean, yes, we all like nice new things and we want things to be of good quality, and, you know, typically that means newer and all that. So, like, so it's nice to see new things happen, but I also hate to see, like, real legitimate history get destroyed in the process. So I do love that this is still standing, and that even though the rest of them were all demolished, that there is still existence there. I'm almost sad that it's or at least most recently known as a beauty supply store and a hair salon, even though it has storefronts and that's what it was meant for. I would love to see something like that almost turned into a museum and kept sort of like a theater, and all of those things would, like, I had mentioned this in one of the other ones where I went to the Mint Museum, or the Museum of the New South, and they had a lot of these kind of scenes set up with old pieces of furniture or cars or things like that. And I'd love to see it kind of decked out the way it used to be, and have like plaques and markers and photos and things built into that space. I think that would be really cool. But I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I thought it was really cool. I think there's a lot of it's called the Historic West End, but I think there's a lot of very unique history there if you're willing to find it. And I think it tells a really good, bigger picture of what Charlotte has been and is becoming. And I think it's cool. But that's my story.
Yeah. Cool. So we've done West End twice now. Mm-hmm. We'll have to... Is that it for the breweries over there? I think so.
It might be. But this is
probably
only
circle
season
back
1.
Around.
Yeah.
We were talking yesterday while we were there. Probably most underrated views
Yes.
of the city are over there. Mm-hmm. Right at Johnson C. Smith Stadium. It had another name for a stadium, but Johnson C. Smith Stadium was voted most scenic.
Yeah. Most scenic stadium.
In Division whatever. They are Division 2.
I'm not
most
sure,
scenic
but
Division 2 stadium or something like that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Just perfect view of the skyline while you're watching football.
Kind of like being at a Knights game. But
Yeah.
I mean, different, but similar, yeah. But yeah, it's a really gorgeous part of town. Mm-hmm. Keep the history alive, people. But yeah, so thank you, as always, for watching and listening and dealing with our shenanigans for another week.
And like, comment, subscribe, all that jam. I'm done telling you to tell your mom.
He doesn't believe you have or you will, so.
Tell somebody else. Tell your coworkers.
I was like, nobody else.
Tell your coworkers.
They don't have fathers. They don't have siblings. They don't have friends. Coworkers.
Y'all, how about everybody in the office that you work at just listen to it and not do any work?
Goodness.
Like, you can make it look like you're doing work, but you're listening to the podcast.
You could be that guy in your office who doesn't care what anybody else is doing, but you're going to play your thing you're listening to louder than everybody else.
Yeah, make everybody listen to it. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Well, thanks, guys, and I reckon we're going to see y'all next week.
Check you later.
Bye.